It's so wonderful to have you all here. I am recording today. As some of you know, I had planned to do this last Friday. I had a situation happen. I moved it to today. So there are a few people who wanted to come, couldn't. So I want to make the recording available to them. So welcome everybody. My name is Rebecca Ryan and you are at Futures Friday, our free Friday webcast series, webinar series, to teach you the tools of foresight or to shine the light on people, communities, leaders, initiatives that are doing a bananas awesome job of bringing foresighted leadership to the fore. We want you to be inspired. We want to put some bubbles in your Friday. So here we are all together. I do want to just at the top of the hour announce that we have just released our new, what shall I say, our new lineup through the end of the year. I'm just putting the link to our webinars there at the end of the year. And yesterday we announced Futurist Camp is going live in July. We think we've got this dialed in. Our class of 2020, summer 2020 really helped us make some important refinements. So we're very pleased to bring you a 4-week intensive Futurist Camp starting in mid-January 2021. It is taught by me and other faculty. It is all live teaching. None of it is in a video that you can download at any time. We do it in cohorts. So you're with 4 or 5 other people in a small group learning together. You've got a dedicated camp counselor who, like at real camp, make sure that all the campers have what they need, and there are band-aids where band-aids are needed and s'mores where s'mores are needed. So we try to make it as fun as possible. We send you a care package before camp starts so that you're all good and ready to go. All right, that's it for the announcements today. Let's get into the main event. I do have a couple of slides to share today, and I will send these out in PDF format after the webinar ends today. But oh, here's a messy desk. Let me start with this fundamental belief about thinking like a futurist. And this isn't reserved for futures, of course. This could be all of us at any time. And the ground assumption to think more like a futurist is to accept that we don't see things as they actually are. We see things as we are, right? We all come, at whatever age you're at right now, we all are born into this world, and over time, through experience, we narrow our focus. And we tend to give more weight to the things that we're interested in or that we're focused on. And we do this all the time. I can hear my wife downstairs right now getting her lunch ready, and it's making me think of this perfect example of this idea that we see things as they are, not as we are. And here's what happened. I'll take the screen share off so that we can see each other a little bit better right now. Here's what happened. She and I were downstairs eating lunch during work from home. And I was standing up eating because I was shoveling it in between meetings. And she was having a more leisurely lunch. So we were already at different speeds. Does that sound familiar in your household, right? We're already at different speeds. And she picked up this small pint jar of this brown liquid. And she didn't know that I had brought this into the house, and she didn't know what it was. And so her question was, what is this? And because I was shoveling food into my mouth very fast, the way that she heard the next word I'm going to say in just a minute was a perfect example of seeing things as she was, not as I was, or as they actually were. So she said, "What is this?" And I, with my mouth full, I said, "Honey." The word I thought I was saying was honey, but it came out like I was yelling and trying to work the word around a mouthful of kale, probably. And what she heard was honey. And she said to me, "You don't have to be mad at me. I was just asking what it was." Because she thought I was rebuking her, saying honey. And I wasn't. I was saying that was actually a jar of honey. And when I finally was able to chew and swallow and say something with my mouth full, we had a hoot and a holler about it. But doesn't this happen all the time, right? We were at different speeds. She heard what she was kind of more positioned to hear. She couldn't actually hear what I said because my mouth was full. This happens all the time. So in the world of foresight, in the world of thinking clearly about anything, why does this matter? The reason it matters is because if we're only seeing things as we are, as this meat suit is arranged, think about all that you miss. You miss so much, right? This is one of the reasons that grandparents and parents love spending time with their kids, because their kids are talking about TikTok and they thought TikTok was on your watch, right? So when we spend time with people who are different ages, different backgrounds, and so forth, it broadens our view, right? And that's what we're going for with a futurist mindset. We're trying to, as best we can, disabuse ourselves of seeing the world just as we are and trying to see the world as it actually is. Now, in order to explain this just a bit better, I want to come back to my slides real quickly and share this idea of system 1 versus system 2 thinking. So that is the wrong keynote. Where is the correct keynote? I'll find it just a minute. Thank you for your patience. So this is right out of, I see Anne-Marie Sawkins is with us here today, and she's going to recognize this. This is right out of the Futurist Camp workbook, right? So this is just a restatement of an amazing and important Pulitzer Prize winning book called Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And Kahneman and Tversky, for over 40 years, ran experiments about how the human mind works. And after running all of these experiments, what they realized is we've got two systems in our brain. Now, please don't look at this and think that this is left brain and right brain. Even though these are laid out left and right, that is not what this means. In fact, I think a fair amount of scientific research shows that left and right brain isn't even really a thing. It's a construct that needs to go the way of the dodo. But in this case, we're talking about a system 1 and a system 2 brain. And as you can see on the left in turquoise, system 1, this is what is called the fast thinking mind. So system 1 equals fast thinking, right? There are things that you do every day that require almost no conscious thought, right? So I don't know what your morning routine is, but do you consciously reach for your phone or unconsciously reach for your phone, right? Do you consciously do your morning routine or do you unconsciously do your morning routine? And that's a great way of kind of introducing this concept, because in the morning when we're groggy and we're just starting to come to waking, we have to be on autopilot. Things that don't require voluntary control require involuntary control. So system 1, I got to tell you, it makes me astonished at our brains, because our system 1 part of our brain is a remarkable achievement. It's a remarkable machine, if you will, because it is so efficient. I mean, all of the things that you do not have to give conscious time and attention to are amazing, and it takes up so little energy. So few energetic calories are required to do system 1 thinking. So system 1 is a great benefit, ... when used appropriately. Because over here on the right in purple is system 2. System 2 thinking is our slow thinking brain. This is the kind of stuff that requires a lot more of us, right? So last week I had an interaction with somebody who said, when reading a book now, I found that I've got to go back and read the same paragraph like 2 or 3 times to actually get it, right? That may be happening to you too. And I think that may be a reflection of how so much more of our brains now are in this system 1 mindset of fast, 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 fast. Did the 140 word tweet ruin our ability to think longer term, longer form with constructed thoughts? I don't know if it did or not. I'll leave that to scientists to figure that out. But it is interesting that, increasingly we're finding system 2 thinking is rare. My birth mom calls it mental gymnastics. Are people willing to do their mental gymnastics? And one of the ways that you might be most familiar with this system 1 versus system 2 is, I think a lot of us probably know of someone close, or at least in a secondary circle of friends, who's had a stroke, right? Who's had a stroke. And when people are recovering from strokes, they're learning to do things anew, learning to walk, learning to raise their hands, speech therapy. And for those of you who have been close to somebody who has gone through therapy, physical therapy after having a stroke, you know that sometimes those therapy sessions are 5 minutes long or 10 minutes long. Why? Because the person who's had a stroke is literally having to use system 2 energy to relearn what most of us take for granted as system 1 sort of involuntary things. So to learn to take one step requires to think, lift my leg, lift my leg. And if your brain has forgotten how to do that, it takes system 2 energy, right? And then after a 5 or a 10-minute or eventually a 30-minute physical therapy appointment, those folks can sleep for hours because it's exhausting. This is common among all people who have had brain injuries, the amount of sleep required for our brain to try to recover and to try to heal. So that system 2 work is very heavy lifting. And in the environment we're in right now, we just came off doing the social dilemma kind of debrief together a couple of weeks ago. We know that we're in an economy that is fighting for our attention. And in order to get little slivers and slices of our attention, when Reed Hastings from Netflix can say that he is competing with sleep for your attention, we know that we're over here in system 1, just effortless, just response, react, right? Not in this kind of long form, slower thinking. So it requires dedicated effort on the part of all of you who are futurists in training to be responsible. When is it appropriate for system 2 to be the work that you're doing versus system 1? And spoiler alert, a lot of system 2 thinking is required for foresight, right? So we have to, when we do foresight work, when we're trying to think like a futurist, I hereby give you permission to slow down, to think through things, to talk with others who are willing to engage in longer discussions, right? It's one of the core fundamental concepts of thinking like a futurist is knowing when system 2 thinking is required, right? So let me share with you a couple of the shortcuts that we have to be cognizant of if we want to think like a futurist. And when I say shortcuts, the fancy word is heuristics, Heuristic, heuristic. And what is a heuristic? It is the system 1 part of our brain, the left-hand side part of our brain. It's that system's attempt to make things easy, to shortcut things for us, right? Because that's what system 1 does, right? It reduces the amount of conscious thought required to make decisions. Your kid asks you for 20 bucks, you just say no. You don't say, why do you need 20 bucks? You don't ask for a rationale. You just instantly say no. Because if you said yes every time your kid asked you for 20 bucks, you'd feel like a human ATM machine, right? So the system 1's job is to try to make things easier for us. So system 1 is the home of all of these heuristics or cognitive biases. I'm going to introduce you to two cognitive biases that really cloud our ability to think like a futurist. Take some notes on this, because then we're going to go into our first small group and we're going to talk about our own experiences with these 2 biases. So here's the first one. This is a Venn diagram, or as my little 3-year-old friend says, a Zen diagram. This is a Zen diagram of the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias, right? Confirmation bias lives in that sliver of overlap between all of the objective facts and those that confirm your beliefs, right? We all have a tendency to see what confirms our beliefs. This is confirmation bias. And one of the, I think, most potent examples is Democrats tend to watch MSNBC and CNN, and Republicans tend to watch Fox News. right? So based on what our bubble of political belief is, we even tune in to different news sources. That's one example of confirmation bias. When we see the facts that confirm our beliefs, okay? Let me show you one other heuristic before I send you into small groups. This one is called the availability heuristic or the availability bias. These images are from the Decision Lab. Brilliant people who have taken so many of these heuristics and made them into very accessible cartoons. But of all the things happening in the world, you see this many of them on the news, maybe even smaller, right? And then all of a sudden, that's your truth. That's your truth. You know, I'll tell an absolutely embarrassing story on myself about the availability bias. I was doing some research for the Wisconsin Governor's Conference on Economic Development, and I was looking at some big trends in Wisconsin and trying to put some forecasts together for this audience. And one of the big trends happening in Wisconsin, and this was from the before times, not the most recent red COVID map that many of you are probably seeing now, but you know, one of our big trends in Wisconsin is that we're getting older, right? So I started to go down the aging in Wisconsin rabbit hole and finding the data, and I came on this website that showed all the shovel-ready sites for Alzheimer and memory care facilities across the state. Many of them were in the north, which is a bit more rural, getting older faster, versus in the south, we've got bigger population centers and those tend to be younger, right? So looking at all these shovel-ready sites for these, and I thought, what an interesting signal for Wisconsin's aging population. And I went so far down this rabbit hole that I took, it could have been Cambridge Analytica who put this up, I don't know, but I took one of those surveys of like, do I have early dementia symptoms? I'm not proud of myself, but this happens to all of us, right? So I take this assessment and all of a sudden my alarm goes off saying I need to go meet my friend for a drink. We're celebrating, she's retiring after a decorated career, and she happens to be one of my best friends and nearly my neighbor. She lives a block and a half away. So I, you know, kind of shut my clamshell on my laptop and I head out the door and I go meet my friend Jan. And while we are talking, toasting her retirement, she makes a comment that makes me think that she didn't remember a previous conversation we had. And immediately my brain went to, oh my God, Jan has Alzheimer's, right? And I didn't say anything, but I worried about it and I kind of thought about it and I kind of looked at her differently, was like kind of looking for other symptoms. Right? And the next morning, I open the clamshell of my laptop back and all my tabs and windows pop open and I see that I had ended on this Alzheimer's early warning assessment. And I'm like, God darn it, Rebecca, this is why you leapt to that conclusion about your friend. It had nothing to do with her. It had everything to do with the fact that I was primed. I was primed because of the availability bias to think about, oh, there's a label that fits on Jan, right? There's a label that fits on my friend. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We're going to take 10 minutes for this, and I'm going to write the instructions here. All I want you to do is take turns, go alpha order by first name. That'll make it easier. What bias is familiar to you? How have you seen it in IRL, in real life, right? So thinking about the confirmation and the availability bias, when have you seen it, right? And how has it manifested in real life? Because sometimes these biases have like no BS consequences in organizations, in communities, in families, and so forth. All right, so let me set up your breakout rooms. Again, we're gonna have 2 to 3 people in a room. And go ahead, you've got 10 minutes. I'll give you a 5-minute warning. Just choose accept breakout room. Should be a little blue bar somewhere on your Zoom screen, and off you go.
No little blue bar.
Oh, try now.
Oh, there
Sorry
it is.
about that, guys. Hello to my caller from the 919 area code. Is that you, Luana? Hi, Rebecca. You are alone. Okay, I'm going to move you to another room that has a small number of people. Hi, this is Rebecca. I just want to mention that if you are in my room, if you're in the main room and you would like to be assigned to a breakout room to discuss these two biases, just let me know and I will put you in a room so that people can hear you. Right now, I can't hear you, 919. The reason I talk about availability bias and confirmation biases is because these are like tricky ninjas. Like you don't even realize that they're operating. And then you make your way down, and you can totally see them in others. Isn't that the thing? Like Lola, I loved your example of who couldn't understand this? Like this is completely readable and understandable. And then you start getting these questions, you're like, oh yeah, that. So I share this to say, thinking like a futurist is not easy because kind of job A1A is accepting that we have these biases and then as best we can working to overcome them. Now, in all the workshops I've done over all the years, I always ask my participants, all right, you've said that you have some experience with these biases. We all do, right? If we haven't seen them in ourselves, we've definitely seen them in others. So what are some of the hacks that you can use to overcome these biases? And without fail, hack number one is to take some time to like let something breathe instead of trying to rush it out the door, or inviting more perspectives in. So give things more time so that you have some of that slow think time to think it through. Or item, number two, invite some people with different perspectives in on this. So there are some ways that you can overcome this, and to the best you can as a futurist. It's why we encourage our futurists to think about who's in the room, right? So I'm doing a project right now as an example, with a group of senior management team of about 11 people, and they've worked together for a long time. They know each other pretty well. And so how did we help them overcome confirmation bias? I mean, they're doing the best they can and they've received training, but they talk often about, what, we need to slow think this, or we need to bring in a red team. The red team's job is to poke holes in their thinking, to question the unquestionable. We'll get to that in another webinar. That's kind of an advanced tool. But for right now, to accept, I, Rebecca Ryan, solemnly accept that I have confirmation bias. And this prevents me from seeing things as they actually are, right? So we'll start there. Let me share with you this. I wish I could say that I had put this together, but I haven't. But here's the first PDF I want to share. It's 16 cognitive biases. I've just put it into the chat. It's a terrific document. You will see that availability bias, or excuse me, confirmation bias is in the upper left-hand corner, kind of like bias number one, the one that we all seem to have. These aren't all the biases. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of biases. But this UK firm felt that these were the biases that really get in the way of innovation. Okay, so enjoy it. It's there for you to have. If anybody has a problem seeing that, I can also drag the PDF into the chat. Let's go to section 2 now. Section 2. So we just talked about cognitive bias. It obstructs our way of thinking and seeing things as they are. So now, what do we know about what's the next step to develop the futurist mindset? In my humble opinion, the next step is to think about thinking. Sounds very meta, doesn't it? Like take the blue pill. Thinking about thinking. So my campers might be having, I know I've got a few futurist campers on the call today, and you might be having a flashback because one of your first reading assignments was to read 6 chapters in this manual, the CIA Intelligence Analysis Handbook. It was almost like a litmus test, like who's really serious about Futurist Camp? Did you read the 6 chapters? This is literally the book that is given to new analysts who work at the CIA. I mean, this isn't the current copy, but it's, in my opinion, it's the best version that they've generated. And why does this handbook exist? Because even CIA analysts who are trained to gather intelligence in foreign countries mess up all the time. We are actually so bad with bias and so bad at actually understanding how our brains work that the CIA has to disabuse people of things like cognitive bias, right? Has to disabuse people that the more information you have, the more certain you can be about a judgment call. Thing after thing after thing has been disproven and disconnected. And oh, by the way, Amos Tversky and Dan Kahneman, the folks who came up with so many of those heuristics in the book Thinking Fast and Slow, they worked with the CIA on this initiative. How can we train our analysts to be better at actually gathering intelligence that's useful? So I'm not going to make you read the 6 chapters, but I am going to tell you what I think some of the key things are in these chapters. The first one is Can you watch your own mind work? Can you observe the observer? What we tend to do is we just do the thinking. We don't think about the thinking. So observe the observer is this notion that if you can think on two levels, if you can both be doing the work and also notice how you're doing the work, notice, oh, I just made an assumption here, right? And then note the assumption, you have a much better chance of being able to gather good intelligence. This is part of the futurist mindset. So we already talked a bit about this when we talked about bias, but we tend to perceive what we expect to perceive, right? So, well, I don't need to go on about that, right? Here's a real Achilles heel. We're quick to form a perspective on something, and we're very slow to walk it back. It could take forever to walk it back. You've probably seen this in your own life, you know. I'll share a very personal example. I'm gay. And when I came out to my parents, they had a very difficult time accepting this because from the time they were young, right, they had been taught certain things about gay people, right? And it wasn't until after my father died, that my mom, who, we'd known each other for a long time by this point, wasn't until after that she was able to say, I've changed my mind. It took her years, it took her over a decade to think differently about the relationship she wanted to have with me, about what my gayness meant or didn't mean, right? But if my German mother can change her mind, anybody can change their mind. So mindsets might be very quick to form and slow to change, but if we can observe that in ourselves, we have a better chance of being able to open our minds up a little further, see a broader set of inputs. Here's another one. We tend to graft new images onto existing images, right? This is one of the first things we learn in adult education, right? In adult education, if you are an instructor, you learn that learners like you, adult learners, tend to hang new knowledge on things they already know. So this is why a moment ago when you went into the breakout room, I asked you to share your experiences with these two biases, because I knew that you would have a better chance of remembering these availability and confirmation biases if you had to process how you had seen them in your life. So we hang new information, new knowledge, new images onto pre-existing information, knowledge and images, right? And then the process for unlearning and unstoring information is practically a lifelong one. You have to actively do it in the same way that if you caught the KonMari fire, right? If you were asking about sparking joy in all of your closets and pantries and throughout your house, right? You know what a process it is to just take things out of a closet and go through them one by one. Does it really spark joy? Does it not spark joy? Same thing with the things that we learn. And guess what? There's no visual about how stuffed our mental closet is with old stuff that doesn't fit anymore, but it's still in there, right? So this gray matter that we have is magical, and it is a wily, slippery ninja, right? So as we're developing a futurist mindset, we've got to be really conscious of all the ways that our mind tricks us, hides things, obfuscates. That's why being able to observe your own mind is so valuable. And then there are a couple other things in here about using hypothesis and evidence. And one of the things that I know for sure in my practice is that gut-brain connection is strong, and your body never lies. Your brain might lie to you, but your body never does. So in Japan, for example, even here in America, we would say, I have a gut feeling about something, right? I have a gut feeling. And if you truly do have a gut feeling about danger or about safety or about, oh, there's just something in this that isn't registering, very often your body is telling you the truth. If you feel the hair go up on the back of your neck, right? This is, our system one, fast thinking brain, is able to do a lot of this processing for us. It's the way that to read my body language and my facial gestures so that you can see if I'm happy, sad, upset, whatever, right? So the body mind connection, the gut brain, the head brain, that is real. That is very real. But many of us feel like our body's only job is to carry our head around to meetings. That's what we think our body does, right? So for my futurists in training, like through Futurist Camp, we work a lot on slowing our bodies down through like short meditations or some breathing exercises so that we can just be better antenna for what's really happening. Okay, so your next assignment in small groups is going to be to do a Fermi problem. Now, I have some campers in the house today, and campers, this is the exact same Fermi problem that you guys had. Now, I expect you to not give the answer to your team, even though you love your team. But what I do want you to do is help your team to Fermiize the problem. So Fermi was a scientist who had a really cool way of thinking through problems that you would think like, this can't be answerable. So when we talk about a Fermi problem, it's one of these unusual, like the famous one is how many piano tuners are in Chicago, right? And what Fermi would do is he would break that problem down into smaller chunks. Here's the question you're going to work on in your small groups. And you may not look it up. You may not look it up on the interwebs, okay? So we're going to practice our slow thinking processes here. So how many humans have flown in space through January 2018? That's the question. Now, here's some of the ways to Fermiize it, right? Can you break this big problem into smaller problems? How might you do that? What is knowable? What is unknowable? And again, because you're not working online on this problem, you're going to have to do this as a discussion in your small group. What's knowable? What's unknowable, right? And then if one of us knows it, like use them, right? So, all right, I'm going to make this a little bit easier for you. You may not look up the answer to the question, but if there is a knowable answer to a sub question, like how many people exist in the world, you may look that up. Please don't cheat. But if somebody knows it and you can find it, all right, I'll let you use the Googles or the Bings or the DuckDucks or whatever you're using. Now, I want you to just keep going until you have an estimate. We are going to make this again a timed exercise. I'm only going to be able to give you 5 minutes for this, but I'm going to make your groups a little bit smaller. So again, the problem, how many humans have flown in space through January 2018? You're going to use your slow thinking to try to figure this out. So let me get back to the screen where I can put you in breakout rooms. I'm going to put you in slightly smaller rooms. Anne-Marie and Leslie, please don't cheat. I know you won't. All right, so off you pop. All rooms are opened. Good luck. I'll see you in 7 minutes.